Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between regular old run-of-the-mill practice and deliberate practice. This was an aha that hit me upside the head like a cosmic 2x4. And you know, sometimes we all need one of those. And can I just make a big confession right now? And this is the truth. So here you go. Here's what it is. This is what hit me upside the head, was this fact that practice is practice is practice, and deliberate practice is something entirely different. And there's this paradox of practice in which I stumbled upon this simply through my own practice. And that is, well, first of all, you know that one of my goals is, and has stayed all of this year, is I am an athlete. That's one of my goals. That's my affirmation, intentional statement out of my goals. There's more to it, but let's just be brief. And the other part of it is because I practice what I preach, and I do use our Take Back Your Life journal, using it every day in my practice for meditation, doing my ritual in the morning. I practice regularly meditation. I practice regularly journaling. I practice regularly goal setting and refinement and all the rest of it. I also practice strength training and exercise, and you know, I take barre, and I do a lot of these different things. I'm set up for all of this stuff. And do you know what has happened lately? I had a lot of stuff going on, and things are a little bit haywire around here, and there's going to be a lot of activity coming up with Thanksgiving on the way and all of that. And that is that I found myself falling into this place of boredom, the B word, boredom. So what happens when you get bored? You just, maybe not today. Maybe, I've got other things that I need to do. This needs to be a priority. I got to work on this. I've got to do that over here. Well, I don't have to tell you what all of that is about. But I want to talk about the repetition of practice, because practice is repetition. It's doing those same things over and over again. But we have this uncanny ability. I know I'm not the only one who gets bored and ends up throwing their good practice away. And I think there's a whole paradox to that. And I think that's one of the things that's going to change your mind a little bit about what this whole thing is about. So the paradox of practice is that, well, of course, practice is defined as repeated performance. Repeated performance doesn't necessarily mean improved performance. Let me say that again. Repeated performance doesn't necessarily mean improved performance. Now, of course, not everything needs to be improved on, but several things do. I mean, if you're practicing tennis, or you're practicing the piano or something else, you've got to get better, or you're going to be stuck with chopsticks for the rest of your life, right? Or playing, the scales or whatever. So it doesn't mean we don't increase performance on everything, like I said. And sometimes what I'm also talking about is that just with regular old practice, sometimes there's no enjoyment either. But I'm finding that deliberate practice increases the enjoyment versus not just kind of going through the motions. And I believe sometimes that that's where we go with our practice, because practice can just be, I just want to check that off my list. I just want to get it done. That's fine for toilet cleaning. That's fine for getting the laundry done. Nobody's going to be, looking at your laundry and saying, she didn't do it right. Or maybe there is, but you know what I'm saying. It's just getting it done. I mean, what's the difference? Just throw that stuff in, wash it, and fold it up and put it away, right? There's a couple of steps involved, but there's no performance grade. There's nothing that it's just a necessary thing that one needs to do when living in this world. You got to get your laundry done, or else buy new clothes all the time. So we know this, and we can be either going through the motions and not getting anywhere with other things, or we can find ourselves in the place where practice almost becomes useless. I'm going to explain why and what the difference is between regular old run-of-the-mill practice for the things that are important, the needle mover things that are important for you in your life, and deliberate practice, because there's a huge differentiator. And I believe that this is going to help you to become a regular, deliberate practicer. At least this is how it walloped me upside the head. And I believe this is what wise women do, by the way, because it is Wise Women's Wednesday, so we need to talk about that. So here's the differentiator. Deliberate practice requires focus. And regular practice, good heavens. We'll have to just get rid of you for a minute and decline. Goodness, how rude. And deliberate practice does not. It doesn't. Deliberate practice requires focus, and regular practice does not require deliberate focus at all. Not at all. It's just going through the motions, like I said. Deliberate practice requires goals attached to them. Regular practice doesn't. It just means just get it done. Deliberate practice requires presence. Oh, I think this is such a big one. And regular practice does not. Have you noticed that? And I've noticed this like in my meditation practice when I'm just like, sit down, just want to get into my meditation practice and basically knock it out, that my mind is all over the place. Now, I've been practicing meditation for a long time, so being present with the meditation is become increasingly easy. At first, I was like a ping pong ball in my brain, but then it became easier to just stay in the moment and stay present in the practice. Whereas if I'm just trying to knock it off my list and just say, I did my morning ritual and just not be present with it, then it becomes a going through the motions thing instead of a deliberate practice. And I find that it's less satisfying, and it's just more mundane stuff that I got to do. Does that make sense to you? It's like you've got to go clean up the dog poop, right? You can't just let your dog poop all over the yard and whatever. You got to clean up after him. Or in my case, you got to try and find it because he's pooping in piles of leaves and I can't find it, to throw it into the woods. We've got a big, large acre lot next to us that we own. And that's where we toss them, just FYI, in case you're wondering what I do with all that poop. But I think that becoming a wise woman means that you're becoming a deliberate practitioner in your life on the things that really and truly matter. And I've got 8 things. Yes, 8 things that are going to help you with this, because I don't want you to get bored and just, and then all of a sudden you've taken your Take Back Your Life journal and thrown it aside, and I don't see the difference that this makes. I just, whatever. It doesn't have to be that way. If you practice it in a deliberate way, it's going to change your life. There is such a huge difference. And number 1 is, how do we do this? Number 1 is you break it down. What are you doing? What is this practice of thing that you're doing? So for example, if we're going to talk about working out, let's just talk about working out, because that's real easy to, measure. Why don't you take a look at it? And I've been doing this too, just recently. I read a blog post from somebody who said, when I started keeping a journal of what I have done for that day, not just checking the box, not just allowing, my app will track what I've done, but really going into it. Like I used 10-pound weights, I used 15-pound weights or whatever. You can see the progress. And that in and of itself is being part of the whole process and really being involved in what it is that you're doing. And that then challenges you because you automatically start to think, well, what can I do a little bit better or a little bit different? Can I lift a little bit heavier? Can I go a little bit longer? I've been trying to run walk. It's not my favorite activity, but I'm doing it with Lincoln in the afternoon and I get to use it on my app and I've got somebody coaching me in my pocket, and now it's time to go for a 4-minute thing. Now they're going, go as hard as you can. And I'm like, honey, I'm doing a jog. That's what I've got for 4 minutes. Don't even push me. But I can see that I'm already getting better after doing this and I'm getting outside. I'm hitting all the things. I need the vitamin D. The dog needs to get his exercise. I need to do this and I love it. I'm getting outside in the sun and looking at the glory, this lake, and the leaves are still here. I'm so grateful. It's really lit me up, and it's deliberate that I have chosen to do this instead of just sitting there on the bike spinning around. And it's made me really appreciate the effort that goes into what it is that I need to do and that I'm able to check all these different boxes. So I break down the habit, I add a task list to it, and I can see where the weaknesses in what I was doing. Well, I was getting bored to death on that bike. I was getting bored on just doing it and just getting it done and just going for the check mark. Sometimes it needs to be broken down a little bit further so that it has actual meaning. And then the deliberate practice, well, then now you're in it. Now there's a goal attached to it. Now you want to see what you can do. Now you want to see what kind of capacity and capability that you have. Now you want to make sure that you're going for the grit, not the quit, right? I love that. I think that's just super cool. It just lights me up. Number 2 is to recognize the difference between mindlessness, boredom, and perfectionism. I think this is critical because we can start thinking everything needs to be broken down then. Everything needs to be looked at. Like, am I doing it right? Am I whatever? And that starts to get into the hand-wringy, worrisome stuff of perfectionism. It starts putting us into the place of just endlessly navel gazing and looking at, am I doing this right? Is this the way it needs to be or whatever? And honestly, most of the time it's not like that. It's just a matter of you holding your plumb line and saying, can I do this just a little bit more this time? Can I give it a little bit of an effort, a little bit more of an effort? Not because you're trying to be the best in the whole entire world, but because you want to see what you're made out of. We've talked about this before, and I had a friend of mine, Jaden Tita. He's a doctor of Chinese medicine, I believe, and smart guy, love him to death. And he's here, lives here in Asheville and in California. And he had this whole thing about talking about, easy. And I remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this whole idea of easy. And what he said in the thing was like, easy never gets you anything. It has no value. And cheap and easy, that's what fast food is, cheap and easy. And where's the value there? There's none, right? And this is the thing that I keep going back to. We're not looking for cheap and easy. What we're looking for is something with value and something that's going to make us that much better. Because I believe that's why we're here, on purpose and for purpose. And until we understand that hard is part of the equation and work requires that you're putting yourself into it, we make peace with that. We're going to be in deliberate practice with the things that matter in our lives. That was a biggie for me. That was a real huge thing for me. Number 3 is to look for the lessons. We're called to do this. We've got to analyze what we're doing. Is this right? Is my form correct? Am I lifting enough weight, or am I simply trying to get through it? Do I need to use a kettlebell for this? Do I need to do this? Can I research this a little bit? How's my form? All of these things all enter into a deliberate practice. And as we do them well, and as we do them better, we see progress. And progress in and of itself is its own reward. You know, that's part of the whole journey. And we get these little dopamine hits. We get these little places of feeling really good about what it is that we're doing because we're present with it and we are making these incremental changes. So we look for the lessons in everything that we're doing. And speaking of the lessons, we allow for the mistakes as well. Because the mistakes are going to enter in, aren't they? Always, they're going to enter in. And this is the place where I have found for me personally, this is where the aha moments are. Well, you know what? Not this, that. I got to do this instead. If I do this, I'm going to get that. Ooh, neat research. As a matter of fact, in our Get Strong, Be Strong webinar that we do, which is, you know, in and of itself is just interesting tidbits I picked up along the way when I was learning about the best optimal way for women to work out. And I found this term, it's called creasing the groove. Greasing, was it creasing or greasing? I can't remember, but greasing the groove. It is all about a Russian technique for Olympians. And it was doing a little bit every day, doing a little bit of this every day, a little bit here and a little bit there. And so I started breaking my workouts down so that I could do the sweaty part in the morning, take a shower, and then to do the rest of them through the day because I got to get my butt up out of my chair anyway. And what I found was it's so much easier to stick with it than to go forward with just this, you know, intense all the way, you know, knocking it all out. Every once in a while I'll do that, but I found it much more effective and much more supportive of my energy level throughout the day when I just do a 10-minute arm workout and then go do something else and come back to my desk and work. And it's interesting how that all worked out and how now I'm finding that the studies, and I'm seeing it recommended everywhere, you know, like micro workouts, they're calling them. Who knew? Who knew? This is what research does. And what it does is it teaches you lessons that you otherwise wouldn't have had. And it gives you an opportunity to grow and to become and to be present with your life instead of just going through the motions. Because can I tell you what? Going through the motions is going to lead you to a place of regret down the road. Period. Period. Because you're going to miss out on the juicy stuff. Number 5 is put your head into it. Okay, so this was interesting. This is what a master pianist said. He said, it doesn't matter how long you practice with your fingers, but if you practice with your head, 2 hours is plenty. You see the difference? There's a connection that is made when what it is that you're doing, whatever kind of a practice is, whether it's your meditative practice, your yoga practice, your exercise practice, whatever it is, the thing that it is that you're trying to improve on, become stronger with. If you've got your head into it, it takes less effort and it will change the way that you do it. Number 6, embrace feedback and constructive criticism. I'm going to tell you what, we all freak out about, criticism, and we all go the opposite way oftentimes of criticism. Criticisms can be evil. Criticism can be over the top, and it's the stuff that we, heard our mothers say, or a horrible teacher at school or whatever. The criticism can just cut to the heart. But somebody who's constructive said, well, have you ever tried this? Or have you ever thought about that? And you really are allowing for the analysis and the breakdown of what's going on here. How do I take this to the next level? That's when, you're able to see the options. That's when you're able to hear the thing you need to hear. I would even go a step further and say, in relationships, you need to be able to and amenable to hearing stuff that maybe you don't want to hear. Because how do you make a relationship better if you don't allow the other person to speak their truth to you and hear the other person? This is how friendships strengthen and last, and marriages, and any other kind of relationship. It's everything. So when we embrace the feedback and the constructive criticism, what we're doing is allowing for creativity as well, because the creativity brings us to the new place of practice. Like, now I can add this new thing into my practice and see how that does. What about that? And number 7 is to deliberately practice, is to have an all-in approach. We've talked about this before a lot. And it's so much easier to be 100% all in than to be even 95% in. Because there's this thing called mental fatigue, and it's decision-making fatigue. You've heard those terms. And the reason why is because when you're going back and forth in your head, your thinking requires a lot of energy. All of this energy that we make from the food that we eat, most of it goes toward our thinking. Did you know that? Our thinking, our brains require that glucose so that we can think. And if we're going back and forth and just mulling, oh, should I or shouldn't I? You're spending a lot of capital, energy capital, on that. In or out, in or out, in or out. You ever have a dog who's like can't decide if they want to go in or out? You're standing there with the open door and you're just thinking, you know what, this dog's making me nuts. In or out, make a decision. That's my question to you. Are you in or out? Make a decision. It will get easier. And last one is to start deliberately practicing. Start deliberately practicing this week and see how things change, especially on anything that you've gotten bored with or just tossed to the side. See how keeping a record will change things up. I've started that with my workouts. I'm now not just crossing it off and checking the box. That was enough for a while. But now I want to really get into it and see what I can do. I'm starting to see the results. Every time I put on clothes that I wore last year, and I mean, we're only talking a 10-pound difference, but the clothes are just hanging on me. I've had to buy a bunch of new clothes. They're hanging on me. It's the result of my workouts. Because remember what I told you about, this is what you've got for, by the way, this is Carb Counter. We have about 5 bottles left. So first come, first serve. So this is fat, 5 pounds of fat. This is 5 pounds of muscle. You see the difference? That's how it is. That's what makes all the difference in the world. So I'm telling you, watch what it happens when you start deliberately practicing. You start recording and measuring the things that you do. You're going to be shocked at how you can tweak things just a little bit to make them a little bit better so that you can get yourself back in the game. It gets fun after that. No more boredom. I think that's a huge thing. What do you think of that? And the last thing I would say to you, you know what? This is how vibrancy shows up. It does. Vibrancy shows up when you're into it. When you're into it, it shows up. And your tools are going to help you to do that so that you're present with it. Yeah? How about that? So here you go. savingdinner.com/tools for all of our tools that we have available. Don't forget those mugs. We have 4 different ones now and 2 different quote decks, and you get to choose. And last thing I'm going to say to you is that the deliberate practice and being present with what it is that we're doing, that's how we created these tools. That's what they're the result of. I love this because it helps me to get the vibrancy that I want out of this life. If I can just stop, going through the motions and start being deliberate in my practice, then I'm going to have that much more vibrancy, that much more energy, and that much better of a focus of what it is that I want. And this is going to work for you too. You know why? You're a wise woman. That's how it works. Thank you so much for joining me today. Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that interesting? I thought it was interesting. Well, at least I had a good time with it. I don't know if you did, but if you did, you know what to do. There's share buttons. There's all kinds of things that you can do with this. And don't forget, we'll see you tomorrow for Thirsty Thursday. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? Peace be with you. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, You are the author of your own story. Until next time.